Hey everyone, it's been a while since I've done a video in this series because I got really busy and then I got sick. Also, I mentioned at the beginning that Judith was going to do some videos. Now that plan's now changed because she's not able to do that. So I'm trying to get another couple of people to do it, hopefully, sometime soon. But in the meantime, it's just me. In our groups, we've been reading through Mark pretty much straight, but in order to catch up, um, I'm not going to do videos for every verse. We're up to chapter 4 now, but I do want to go back and look at chapter 2, verse 18 to chapter 3, verse 6, because I learned a lot from these verses, and I know that other people did too. If you haven't read them, then I would encourage you to have a read now. Otherwise, you won't have any idea what I'm talking about. When you first read these verses, you'll probably be a bit confused because they seem to be all about weird old laws. But there's some awesome truth in the middle of that. It starts off with some people asking Jesus why his disciples weren't fasting when the Pharisees and John the Baptist's disciples were. Now, it doesn't say why those groups were fasting, but corporate fasting was quite common at the time. People did it in order to get close to God, either by remembering what he had done in the past in response to judgment, to ask him for something, to show repentance, or to gain wisdom. And they also did it when they were in mourning. If you've been reading through Mark, you've probably noticed that Jesus has a weird way of making everything about him. That's because everything is about him. As an answer to the question about fasting, Jesus says, how can the guests of the bridegroom fast while he's with them? They can't, so long as they have him with them. But the time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them, and on that day they will fast. In this example, Jesus is the bridegroom that everyone's been waiting for, so they can get the party started. He's saying, I'm here, we can eat. But there will be a time when I'm gone, and then you can fast. Then Jesus switches gears and starts talking about cloth and wine, saying you can't sew new cloth onto old, or pour new wine into old wineskins, because that just ruins things. The message here is, now that I'm here, things are new. You can't keep trying to do things the old way. It'll just cause a mess. Specifically, Jesus is talking about the law versus real relationship with God. Now, the Pharisees were people of the law. They made a show of obeying the law. But in trying to interpret the law, they added a whole lot of other laws just to make sure they didn't break it. This is seen in the next story where they criticized Jesus' disciples for picking some heads of grain on the Sabbath. Now, the actual law they're talking about is one of the 10 Commandments. It's in Exodus 20, verse 8, and it says, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work. So that's it. Don't work on the seventh day, take a break. Now, the Pharisees had so twisted this law that picking some heads of grain was considered illegal. They had hundreds of extra rules about what was work and what wasn't, and that gave them power. But Jesus answered them by telling a story about David, Israel's most famous king, who broke the law by eating bread that had been consecrated to God. Then he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. The point of the story isn't that someone famous broke the law and therefore it's okay. Jesus' point is that the law was designed to benefit people. It wasn't designed to control people. Now, Jesus is not saying that the law is bad. I don't think it's too strong to say that it was through the law that God made Israel into a nation. Before they were given the law, they were in slavery for 400 years. They needed to be taught a new way. But Jesus said, "The Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath." He is the fulfillment of the law. He's the one that the law points to. Therefore, when you know him, you're no longer under the law. It's not about rules anymore, it's about relationship. He made it all about him. And like we see so often throughout the book of Mark, Jesus doesn't simply teach something, he also demonstrates it. When the Pharisees showed just how much they had twisted God's law by trying to argue that healing on the Sabbath is against the law, Jesus asked them, "Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil? To save life or to kill?" If, as Jesus taught, the law was designed to benefit people rather than to control them, then the answer is pretty obvious. It's lawful to do good and to save life. Jesus then demonstrated that he was the Lord of the Sabbath and that his power came from God by healing the man's hand. Now, this next part really jumps out at me because it seems like such an overreaction. It says, "Then the Pharisees went out and began to plot with the Herodians how they might kill Jesus." Why did they want to kill him? I think it's because they realized just how revolutionary his teaching was. If it wasn't about the law anymore, then they had no power. The world was completely turned upside down. Jesus was teaching that people didn't need others to interpret the law for them, to tell them exactly what they could and couldn't do. It was all about knowing him. And to emphasize that point, he hung out with tax collectors and sinners. For people who had convinced themselves that their interpretation of the law made them better than everyone else, this was too much. Jesus had exposed them as people who didn't know God at all, people who are only interested in power. So, to answer the question, how does this change my life? I'm just so thankful that it's not about what you know or what you do, it's about who you know. It really is all about him. So I want to focus on knowing God instead of just following the rules. To do that, I've really been trying to put prayer, both listening to God and speaking to God, at the very center of my life, rather than something I do when nothing else seems to be working. And I'm really excited about what that's going to bring. God bless.